but I want to also, Fareed, for a moment focus on the other big talking point, which is Ukraine. This has been a dramatic week of a kind I'm sure you've never seen also in your long career observing diplomacy. That standoff with Zelensky, it's gone viral across the world like little else. And today Trump turns around and says Zelensky is ready to talk peace and he hopes to have a peace dialogue as well as a deal on minerals. The Russians are in agreement. How do you see this playing out now over the next few weeks, given what we've seen happen in the last few days with Ukraine?
It'll still take a long time because the reality is the Russians are not ready for peace. What they are ready for is victory. What they want are very humiliating terms for Ukraine, which the Ukrainians even now will probably not accept. But I think what you're absolutely right, Rajdeep, that what we saw was a completely unprecedented thing in foreign policy, certainly American foreign policy, which was the role reversal. The United States has always, for the last 80 years certainly, tried to be on the side of democracies fighting against dictatorships, of the victim of aggression fighting against the aggressor. In this case, not only did he weaken that support for Ukraine, he flipped. The Donald Trump essentially has been now for the last few days supporting Russia. They have put a hold on military aid. They have put a hold on intelligence sharing. The Russians, my intelligence tells me, are planning a big bombing campaign. Remember, the Russians bomb Ukraine every day, 500 Iranian Shahed drones at the very least, and they are ramping that up. So the US and Russia are trying to put Ukraine in a pincer movement. This is something nobody has ever seen, and I suspect it's going to have very deep long-term consequences. Look, if the United States can turn its back on a country it has been supporting ever since its independence in 1991, and put it under the screws this way, what does that say to countries in Europe that the United States promises to protect? What does it say to countries like Japan and South Korea? Frankly, what does it say to a country like India that is trying to have closer security relations with the United States? Is our American promises, guarantees meaningful if you're going to adopt the basic difference is Trump has taken a transactional approach, and so every issue is taken for new. But the US over the last 80 years did not build its world order based on transactions. It based it on relationships that were built over decades. And that's the difference. Are we building relationships or are we having transactions?
Given that he's turning foreign policy transactional and in a sense upturning the world order and disrupting it totally, how do you see it play out now? Do you see with Zelensky and Putin coming with Trump on the dialogue table in the near future? Is that possible? Will Europe feel completely abandoned? And what does it do to the alliances that have held for years, decades after the Second World War, like NATO? Is all of that now going to be disrupted, or is this purely transactional for the short-term goal of achieving some kind of a temporary truce or peace in Ukraine?
So you put the question exactly right. In the short term, look, Zelensky has no options. The United States is the principal military supporter. And if the United States threatens to withdraw that support, that is a deadly blow for the Ukrainians. They cannot afford that. So Zelensky will have to come to the table. Putin will come. Look, Putin has gotten almost every demand Putin has. Trump has already conceded. Trump says, Putin can keep all the territory he has gained. He's talked about potentially relaxing the sanctions on Russia. He's talked about how NATO membership for Ukraine is out of the question. He's talked about no American troops in Ukraine. These were the key demands that Putin had, which were supposed to be affected in the negotiation. This master deal maker, Donald Trump, has done the most bizarre negotiation I've ever seen, which is he has preemptively conceded every point to Putin. So in the short run, there's going to be negotiations. I suspect that they will take longer because, as I say, the Ukrainians really cannot accept a complete humiliation and surrender that Trump seems to want to place on them. But the longer term effect is the one that I worry about, Rajdeep, which is what does this mean for NATO? After all, what is NATO? It's not the buildings, it's not the pieces of paper, it's not the meetings of the ministers. It is fundamentally it's the question: will the president of the United States send American military power to defend a small European country if it is attacked by Russia? And you tell me, do you think any European country, particularly the small ones close to Russia, can be confident that President Trump would in fact defend them? No. So they are nervous. They're going to start thinking about what do they need to do as a result. But I think it also has an effect on how the Taiwanese think about their future, how the Japanese and the South Koreans think of their, because everybody, at the end of the day, the US was the linchpin underpinning the stability of the world, and it had anchored that in these alliances. And the core to these alliances was the United States will protect you if you're attacked. That is what's kept the peace for 80 years.